Good day everyone, we are the Group 6 reporters and we were going to discuss the arts in Asia. Arts in Asia is also known for its ritual bronzes, beautiful ceramics, jades, textile, poetic painted landscape, garden design, elaborate goldwork, extraordinary temples, shrines, pagodas, and stupas, woodblock prints, shadow puppets, and the highest art form in East Asian art, calligraphy. Objectives. First, what is art in Asia? Second, Chinese art. Third, the Japanese art. And lastly, the Philippine art. What is art in Asia? Asian art is highly diverse and it's greatly influenced by geography, politics, and religion. It also best characterized by its use of symbols and motifs from animals, trees, and plants to other subjects. It corresponds to representation of character or value Asian people aspire to have.
Chinese art. The beginning of Chinese culture can be traced all the way to 2000 BC. At this civilization flourished, its people developed knowledge and skills in many different fields. Its art and culture have been particularly influenced by their religious and spiritual beliefs such as Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism. In Chinese art, the people develop their knowledge and skills in different fields. For example, the printmaking or the calligraphy. So people develop their knowledge and skills by doing calligraphy. Because when we say calligraphy, it means a good writing. And also Chinese art, its culture and art particularly influence the religious and spiritual beliefs such as the Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism. Chinese art can be characterized by its emphasis on people's innate and sacred connection with nature. In Chinese art also, you need to characterize also its emphasis in order for us to have the connection with nature. For example, is the Great Wall of China. We can see there that it is characterized by its emphasis because millions of people died because of reconstructing. But before that, in order for us to have more knowledge about the Chinese art, these are the example of Chinese famous artworks. The first one is crafts bronze vessels. Bronze vessels can be found in ancient graves. Can prove that Chinese artisans already had these skills by the first dynasty. When we say bronze vessels, it is used to hold offerings of food or drink for the spirits of respected ancestors. We can see in the picture that it's richly decorated with monsters with curled tails and gaping jaws or tigers, snakes, birds, and elephants. The second one is porcelain. Porcelain is a fine-grained, high-quality form of pottery made from white clay known as kaolin. This clay is relatively rare and can only be found in some part of China, Europe, and North America. Chinese artisans further developed the art of creating porcelain, adding a stunning cobalt blue glaze. When we say white clay, it also known as kaolin. And in making porcelain, clay is rare to find and you can be found only in the part of China, Europe, and North America. And Chinese artisans mastered the art of creating porcelain during the height of Tang Dynasty. The third one is printmaking or Chinese calligraphy. When we say calligraphy, means a good writing. For the Chinese, it goes beyond exquisite way of writing the characters, for they consider it is a form of art requiring mental discipline involving both the body and the soul. Calligraphy is a form of self-cultivation and self-expression. It is also traditionally regarded as the highest form of visual art. For example, is the scholar could not pass an examination to become an official by having a limited skill in calligraphy. A person's character was also judged by his or her handwriting, for elegant handwriting was believed to reveal a person's astute character and refinement. By this example, you can see a person having a lack of skill in doing the calligraphy and by judged by his or her handwriting. Because when we say calligraphy, it means a good writing. And also calligraphy, it is the traditionally regarded as the highest form of visual art. The last one is the Great Wall of China. It was constructed during the reign of Emperor Qin Shi Huang during the Qin dynasty in 221 BC. We can see the picture that the wall is stretching 6,000 kilometers. It is considered that the longest pre-modern architectural structure. And also, it is one of the 7 wonders of the world and was granted the World Heritage status by UNESCO in 1987. During the Qin dynasty, it was originally constructed using earthen materials, but would later be reconstructed during the Ming dynasty into the stone and brick wall tourists see today. It also estimated that up to 1 million people died while constructing the Great Wall of China. And also, the Great Wall of China is the longest cemetery in the world.
So we have 4 examples of Japanese art, such as the ukiyo-e, origami, kumadori, and the last one is architecture. Japanese art. Japan. Japan is an island nation in East Asia located in the Pacific Ocean, just off eastern coast of mainland Asia. It has a long and proud heritage that is uniquely its own. Although China is acknowledged as the center of Asian civilization in East Asia, and many elements of Japanese society bear the Chinese influence, Japan also developed its own distinct art and culture that stems from its unique geography and environment, as well as its spiritual and religious beliefs. Japan also visual arts are greatly influenced by their beliefs in forces of nature, Shintoism, and the impermanence of life Buddhism. Ukiyo-e are handmade prints that enabled printers to blend their favored bright, sharp colors with contours done with somi ink on the printing block. This genre thrived from the 17th through 19th centuries. Its artists produced wood-block prints and painting of female beauties, kabuki actors, sumo wrestlers, scenes from history and folk tales, travel scenes and landscape and flora and fauna. The second one is origami. The goal of origami or paper folding is to transform a sheet of paper into a finished sculpture through folding and sculpting techniques. Practitioners discourage cutting, gluing, or making on the paper. It is made only as toys or for decorative purposes, but also as a way to express kindness and love to someone if this is given as a gift. Different shapes correspond to different meanings. This requires patience and skills. This art can actually elevate your interest to create aesthetically pleasing objects out of simple paper. Lastly is the architecture. Much in the traditional architecture of Japan is imported from China and other Asian cultures over the centuries. A distinct feature of a traditional Japanese house is the way in which it is open to nature. The main materials used are wood, earth, and paper, and the construction is spread out sideways rather than upwards. The interior normally consists of a single room at the center called muya. Inner piece division are fluid, and room size can be modified through the use of screens or sliding doors. The roofs constitute half the size of the whole structure, with slightly curved eaves that extend far beyond the walls.
The Komadori. Asian theater include the most sophisticated face painting design in the world, such as the Komadori makeup tradition of Japan. The metamorphosis of kabuki actors begin in his makeup. They call it face preparation and help transform them to become living special effects that help present the story. The function of Komadori is to, first, capture and project the expression of the actor in enhanced form. Second, internalize the inner persona of the role to a design that responds to the actor's picture.
Philippine art. As a Filipino, we should have the knowledge about the different art forms in the Philippines for us to understand the culture, tradition, and nation's identity. Philippine art throughout Philippine history, spanning from the pre-colonial period to the contemporary periods, different art forms have emerged in the Philippine art scene. Before the colonizers came to the Philippines, ethnic minorities have used art not only for daily activities but also for religious rituals and practices. Most art forms used by the ethnic communities include pottery, weaving, carving, and the use of metalwork and jewelry. Pottery is said to be one of the earliest art forms used by the early Filipino people. One example of Philippines' famous artwork is the Manunggul jar. Manunggul jar is one of the most prominent artifacts related to pottery found in Palawan. This jar is a representation of the early Filipinos' religious beliefs and practices. It serves as a burial jar which depicts two men rowing a boat. This reflects their belief in afterlife. The crossing of the body of water is a transition from life here on earth onto the next. The upper part of the Manunggul jar as well as the cover is carved with curvilinear scroll designs reminiscent of waves on the sea, which are painted with hematite. At the top handle of its cover, there are two human figures in a boat representing the voyage to the afterlife.
Sculpting principle. Orientation, proportion, scale, and balance are all important principles in sculpting. More than in 20 art, sculpting requires a great deal of composition and physical stability. Weaving or paghahabi in Tagalog is a dedicated process of binding beautiful and colorful fabric and textile to form a cloth. In the Philippines, weaving is not just a craft filled with fashion and dedication, it is also a source of income. Weaving was also one of the earliest forms of the art expressions in the Philippines. One of the most popular artisans of weaving is the people from the Cordilleras. They are known for their colorful woven cloth, which also have both religious and practical value. The Tiboli people from Mindanao are also known for their woven abaca cloth called tinalak. They use this particular cloth to make ornaments, which also represent their beliefs through symbols. The weaving culture in the Philippines dates back in the 30th century. The tradition make use of raw materials like local cotton, abaca, fibers, and pineapples. Many Filipinos are very spiritual people. In fact, our traditions are rooted in beliefs that were passed on by our ancestors. Why weaving is an art? Weaving is a tactile medium. Beyond composition, there is a structural element that has dimension and engages more senses than just the eye. It is an art form that you can appreciate by looking, touching, and using it.
Ukir. In Mindanao, the Tausug and Maranao people are known for their ukir, which are designs applied to their wood carvings. The ukir motif is an art depicting the indigenous originality and skill of the Maranaos. It is a fine art of figuring, painting, carving, and sculpturing, depicting the social and psychological identity of Maranao society. Their common subjects include the Sarimanok, Naga, and the Pakurabong. Each subject is a representation for a certain theme or motif, but generally, these symbols depict their beliefs as a people. Sarimanok. The Sarimanok is the legendary bird that has become an ubiquitous symbol of Maranao art. It is depicted as a fowl with colorful wings and a feathered tail, holding a fish on its beak or talons. The head is profusely decorated with scroll, leaf, and spiral motifs. It is said to be a symbol of good fortune. Naga. How will you turn this picture one show you into an ancient Greek-inspired piece? Think of the subject, the pose, the balance, and the flow of the picture. Which features will you change? Initially, jewelry was used as amulets for protection to drive away evil spirits. Eventually, some minority groups from the Cordilleras and Cotabato utilized jewelry as ornaments. Integrated in their clothing, the Naga forms an S shape depicting an elaborate figure of a mythical dragon or serpent. The numerous curved lines serving as detail for the figure depicts the scales. Pakurabong. The Pakurabong, on the other hand, is like a growing fern with a broad base. The fern gracefully stems and tapers upward. The Sarimanok and Naga are usually used as ornamental designs for the houses of the sultans.
Spoliarium. Spoliarium depicts bloody carcasses of slave gladiators being dragged away from the arena where they had entertained their Roman masters with their lives. The painting was submitted by Juan Luna to the Exposición Nacional de Bellas Artes in 1884 in Madrid, where it garnered the first gold medal. Spoliarium was kind of painting that lent itself to the patriotic needs of the Filipinos and on which Rizal and other projected of nationalistic symbolism that helped rouse the Filipinos to rise up against the political oppression of their Spanish colonizers. Spoliarium as a symbol of our social, moral, and political life, humanity unredeemed, reason and aspiration in open fight with prejudice, fanaticism, and injustice.
7 contemporary fine arts disciplines. First, painting. Second, sculpture. Third, architecture. Fourth, poetry. Fifth, music. Sixth, literature. And 7, dance. The National Fine Arts Collection is maintained by the National Museum of the Philippines and currently housed at the National Museum of Fine Arts. Old Legislative Building, Manila. It is composed of a significant number of paintings, sculptures, icons, sketches, mixed media, and photographs by Filipino visual artists. It includes important works of Philippine national artists from 18th century to the late 21st century. Inside the National Museum of Fine Arts are paintings from the National Fine Arts Collection and other paintings loaned from institutions and individuals declared as national cultural treasures and important culture properties or ICPs. A national cultural treasure is any cultural property found locally possessing outstanding historical, cultural, artistic, and scientific value significant to the country. On the other hand, an important cultural property or ICP is a cultural property having exceptional cultural, artistic, and historical significance to the Philippines. It is important also because every contemporary art reflects someone's feelings, ideas, or perspectives. Through contemporary art, Filipinos can express themselves in a way that will be safely observable for others. These arts can be seen in the museums, which contains collections and treasures at all forms, and it means a personal expression.
History of Philippine architecture. The history and culture of the Philippines are reflected its architecture heritage in the dwellings of its various peoples, in churches and the buildings that have risen in response to the demands of progress and the aspiration of the people. Architecture in the Philippines today is the result of a natural growth enriched with the absorption of varied influence. It developed from the pre-colonial influence of our neighboring Malay brothers, continued on the Spanish colonial period, the American Commonwealth period, and the modern contemporary times. As a result, the Philippines has become an architecture melting pot, uniquely Filipino with a tint of the Occidental. Poetic art can be defined as a collection of precept who imitating nature in way that is pleasing to those who produce this imitation. To take such words pleasing, one has to 1. Make a choice among the objects one wants to imitate. 2. Imitate them perfectly. 3. Make an expression of the imitation as perfect as possible. This expression is done through words in poetry. Thus, the words must be as perfect as possible. All the rules of Horace's poetics concern these three objects. The Philippine music are the mix of European, American, and native sound, influenced by the music of the Philippine 377-year-long heritage of colonial Spain, Western rock and roll, hip-hop, and popular music from the United States. The folk music of population Austronesian and Indo-Malayan music, Gamelan. Philippine literature is literature associated with the Philippines from prehistory through its colonial legacies and on the present Hispanic Philippines. Literature was actually epics passed on from generation to generation originally through an oral tradition.